Thank you for watching this video about methods. Methods are the procedural abstraction of the Java programming language, and like everything else in Java, they're way more complicated than the fun we had with functions in JavaScript, or the build your own block we used in Scratch, or the procedures that we used in MIT App Inventor if you took that class. So all of those are examples of procedural abstraction, or the ability of a programming language to be able to make its own commands that take in parameters that make very flexible and powerful programming tools that we can add to our language. We're going to add our first powerful programming tool to our language, and we're going to call it triple number. So what we're going to do with a triple number is we're going to take in any number that's provided to the method, and we're going to triple it. First, let me explain how you set up a method signature is what we call it. So like many things in Java, you have to start with declaring the access, and the access we're going to declare is public. And then then we have to say static, because once it's a static class, like main is a static class, now it has to continue being a static class. So in everything you write today, everything is going to start with PS, PlayStation or public static. Now the next word is where it starts to vary a little bit, because for this next word, this is going to depend on what the method is going to return. Since my method that I'm going to write is going to return a number 3 times the value it takes in, it's going to return a number, and I can either be an int or a double, but in this case I'm going to return an int. And the method, I'm going to name it with good style by using camel case, and I'm going to call it triple number, and it's going to triple a number it's provided. Now that number is going to go into these parentheses, but first I just kind of want to show off one more thing, and I am going to add that parameter in just a second. I do want to show that I add a return statement. Now in my case, I'm going to start with just a generic return of kind of -1, -1, -1, -1. So right now, my triple number isn't taking in any values yet, because I want to show you the major flaw in my code so far. It works great, but I never see that -1, -1, -1. Well, it's a combination of problems. First, you probably remember when we were going over methods, I would talk about, you have to call the method, call me maybe. It's the number one problem with the method. So I've got to call the method. And the way I call the method, because it's returning a value, is I've got to make a spot for that result to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an int named result, and I'm going to put into that int result the triple number. Now with the method I have right now, with the method I have right now, all it's going to do is return that -1, -1, -1. So when I run it, it doesn't have any compile errors, but you notice this green line tells me I never used it. Well, instead of outputting hello world, let's output result. So what we should have now is a nice case of -1s. So I have that triple number working, it's returning -1s. A couple of features I want you to notice is that when I get the result of the method, I put it into a variable. I named it result. I also use camel case naming conventions for the name of the method. I also did this open paren, close paren, because I wasn't taking in any values, but I still have to tell it, hey, this is a method, and here's the method. So the code is going to search for the method. It found it, and then it implemented this code, which just told it to return 3 ones. Now I can make this code even cooler, and I can give it a number like 5, and I can ask it to triple that number. But right now, you notice it's throwing me an error again, because I'm giving it or passing it a value, but yet my method isn't prepared to take in a value. So I'm going to set up my method by basically declaring a variable, but not assigning it any value. I'm going to declare an int that's going to take in a number that's going to be passed to it when the method is called. So this method, triple number is going to take with it or pass with it a 5. By the way, you can pass all kinds of things. You can pass ints, doubles, strings, booleans. You can even, as things get more complicated, you can even pass in classes and things like that. But for now, I'm just going to pass in a single int, and I'm going to name that int n. And now n is available to me in the code. Just to show you how that works, I'm just going to get it and return it. I'm not going to do the triple number thing with it yet. And as you see, when I run that code, I pass it a 5, it returned a 5. But wouldn't it be more fun if it took that number and did its job and tripled it? Well, that's just simple math for a computer. I'm going to take it times 3, so I'm going to take n times 3, so now it should return 15. I have just written a method that takes in a value, triples it, and returns it. And now I have a new command in my program, and my program has a new, like a piece of language there called triple number that it takes in, and it can take a number and triple it. So we now have that little triple thing going on there. All right, next, let's change it up a little bit, and let's create another method. Let's create a method where I merge two strings together. So I want to create a new string, and I'm going to call this merged strings. I'll just call it merged, and it's going to use a method that's going to like take two strings and merge them. So why don't I decide here what I'm going to call it. So I'm going to use that PlayStation again, public static, but this time I want a return, and I need to name this thing. So public static string, what should I name this thing? I'm going to call this merge strings. Clever, right? So merge strings is going to take in the first string, and then it's going to take in the second string, and then it's going to merge them together. Now it's popping up an error, and you're probably like, why is it returning an error or popping up an error? That's typed perfectly, and it is typed perfectly. But what I need to do is have a return that is of type string. So right now, I'm just going to have it under construction. So right now, it's just going to return under construction. So I'm going to call it merge strings. So there is merge strings with valid syntax. There's an A and a B. Now I'm going to system.out the results of that. And let's see what we get. I got under construction. It worked. So this didn't merge my strings though. So in order to do that, what I need to do is I need to do the actual coding that does the merging. So I'm going to take A plus B, which is going to concatenate those two strings together. When I run that, you can see I get the A, B, C, D, the code I expected. Now, you'll notice a couple things about this. First, it did take in two values instead of just one. And then when I called it, I needed to call it with two values. Look what happens when I only call it with one value. I get an error because it says it needs two strings. It kind of gives me a little clue there. So I'm going to put that back, and boom, it works again. So cool stuff to note. Now, the last thing we're going to do is methods that don't return anything. The last kind of method you would might want to create, although it's not as common, is a void method. You'll notice that our public static main method is actually a void method that takes in an array of arguments. Isn't that interesting? But it's void because it doesn't return any values back to whoever calls main, which in this case is the Java compiler. It doesn't return a value, it executes the program. So we're going to create a void method as well. Our void method is going to return 3 blank lines. So we can put like 3 blank lines between things. So I'm going to create my method signature first. So public static void, because this is going to return anything. And I'm going to call this one 3 lines. Now it's not going to take in any values, but what it is going to do is it's going to return 3 blank lines. So the easiest way to do that would just be to go like that and to use the escape character n, which returns that 3 blank lines. So this is going to return that sorry, my bad. I can't return anything. I got to do it here. So I'm going to do it here. Sorry. System.out.println, and I'm going to make 3 blank lines. Boom. So just going to give me 3 blank lines. So here when I run it, oh, why didn't it work? Why didn't it put 3 spaces between my thing? Well, I didn't call it. So a void method is called a little different than the methods that return a value. The methods that return a value need to be put somewhere, right? The method that this 3 lines one, this one, I just call it. I just say 3 lines, open paren, close paren, and I'm going to get 3 lines right there. Boom, there's 3 lines. Well, I could also put 3 lines at the start of my thing. Boom, isn't that exciting? I got 3 lines everywhere. One more thing I want to talk about is kind of the extra use of this result. I could save this intermediate temporary variable by just taking this code and putting it directly in to the print line. So I'm calling the method right from the system.out instead of creating a variable to store it in, and it's going to have the same results. Same with this merged thing. So just to show you what that would look like, I'm going to make a new one, system.out.println, and I'm going to merge. I'm going to use it's called merge string, and I'm going to merge the strings Java with the string rocks. So I instead put it right inside the print line there, and you can see I made some kind of mistake. Merge strings. Bet some of you saw that and were laughing at me. Okay, there we go. Java rocks. So just kind of a finishing touch to save some lines of code. The stuff you're going to be doing in your practices are going to use that system. So what I'm going to ask you to do is finish these replets. There are several of the replets for today's lesson. There's 7 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you do 6 or 7 of them and pass the tests, you'll get advanced. 4 or 5 is proficient, etc., etc. So feel free to check that out and finish writing that program. And yes, I kept it to under 15 minutes.